Hey guys, welcome back to Medical Coding with Blue. Today I'm just going to talk about some random thoughts and some emails that I've gotten lately. And I'm going to address some comments that I've gotten as well. I wanted to say first that I have been getting a lot of resumes lately from people. Now, sometimes people think that I hire people. I don't. I don't hire. I've never put out that vibe that I do any of the hiring. I don't. I am just a medical coder. That's all I do. My channel is built on the premise of talking about medical coding and what it's like in the life of a medical coder. I don't do the hiring, so if you send me your resume, there's nothing I can do with it. But I will suggest something to people who are working on their resumes and sending them out to potential employers. Make sure that you look over it and proofread it, because things that don't make sense on your resume, or words that are misspelled, or things that are not complete, are going to make that resume get kicked to the bottom of the pile. So you want to make sure that, and that to me is just looking at it from a potential, like what I would want to do for, to get the attention of a potential employer. Okay. I'm going to make myself look as impeccable as possible. You want to make sure that you are not just putting anything and everything on there. You want to proofread, and you want to, ask somebody else to look at it and see if it makes sense to them. So just don't send just anything, okay? Attention to detail is very important. Good grammar, punctuation is very key. These are detail things, but they mean a lot. If I was doing hiring and I saw somebody with lots of misspelled words, you better believe I'm going to kick that to the bottom of the pile or put that in the reject pile, because there is no excuse, especially with all the word software we have. There is no excuse for having misspelled words. I'm just saying. This is going to be something that may help you, in the future. So either check out a book, which is what I did. I checked out a resume template book, okay, and I looked at all the different scenarios that I could have possibly used for my resume. I tried to keep my resume down to one page. I put all the most pertinent things on there. I would never ever submit a 3 or 4 page resume. Again, that's just too much information. That's a little ridiculous, if you ask me. So make sure that when you are doing your resume, make it no more than 2 pages. I like to stick with 1 page because I've always heard that. It's 1 page. This is a quick snapshot of all the things that you've done. Don't make it too wordy, but make it wordy enough that you are going to be able to showcase yourself in a positive way. Make full use of that 1 page, and if you have to use 2 pages, but I would really recommend only 1 page. And then, like, for your references, you can have a whole separate sheet and just say professional references available upon request, which is what I did with my resume. So I hope that is something that'll help those that are trying to send me resumes. Again, guys, don't do that, because there's nothing that I can do with it. I had to knock on a lot of doors when I was looking for a job. I went to a temporary agency. Had I known back then that you could go to a medical billing company and start getting experience that way, I would have done that. A lot of times, medical billing companies the people don't have to have experience. They just sort of process paperwork, and my hair is getting caught. They process paperwork, so a lot of times they don't even have to be certified medical coders. So if you do have a medical coding certification and you are applying for a medical billing job, that is a wonderful way to start out in the field, because you're already a step ahead when you understand and know medical coding. I have always said this. I really do wish that medical billers were actually medical coders, or they had a certification so they could understand what they're looking at. Sometimes when in my facility, I'll get a kickback from a biller to say review the documentation and review the coding, and I have to literally kick it back and say, well, no, this is applicable because of this and this and this. So if they were certified medical coders, they would know that, instead of just assuming something is off or wrong, and that's just my opinion on that one. My other thing is, some people have been saying lately that they're on the fence about, whether they want to be a medical coder or not. There's the advice that I can say, or just my thoughts in general, is the fact that it is a lot of reading. It is a lot of reading. It is a lot of studying. This is not something that's going to change once you get out of school. You are going to continue to learn. When I went to medical coding school, I will tell you this, I learned less than 1/10 of what I know now. Less than 1/10 of what I know now is what I learned when I was in medical coding school. And basically all I learned there was how to navigate the book and the rules. That was all I learned. I didn't really learn about the disease process. I didn't learn about all of the other things. I learned that while I was on the job. And you will always learn. There is no way to get around reading. That is one thing that is very important. Reading comprehension is extremely important. If the more your vocabulary is full and vast, the better off you are, particularly when it comes to medical terminology. If you know that certain words mean the same thing, like rhino and nasal are the same thing, these are things that are going to help you, because then they'll be able to make you think of how to say it in a different way if you can't find it in the book, like the diagnosis or the procedure or whatever you're looking for. So that is one thing to think about. Those are some of the big things when it comes to medical coding, and always being willing to change, because these rules get updated every year. The codes get updated every year. Sometimes things change midstream. You know what I mean? There are different things, and then different facilities sometimes have special rules for coding. So that's another thing to consider too. So what may seem hard and fast in the book, once you get to your facility, you may not follow that. You may follow some other guidance that they have. That's just part of it. The other part of it is ethics. We have a responsibility as coders to speak up when we see things that are wrong. Whether it is that a wrong code is being selected, or maybe when we're being audited, that if the auditor is saying, it's this way, and we have actually a coding clinic or something that can prove some solid piece of evidence that we can prove why we selected a code that we selected. If the auditor tells you that your answer is wrong, and you can come up with this very valid resource and say, hey, this coding clinic says this, or this reference says it this way, or whatever, then that's when you need to speak up. Don't just accept that, oh, well, they said it was this way. If you can show them and give them a good and respectful argument, that is what you want to do, because not speaking up and just sort of rolling over and saying, oh, okay, well, ignorance is not an excuse. Okay, this is why, sometimes facilities will lose money, because if somebody is like the auditor and they say that they're correct, and everybody below them is very scared to say anything, and actually the auditor was technically wrong. And I'm not saying that it's always that way, okay? Just hear what I'm saying. If the auditor is wrong and there are people below them are not saying anything and just sort of going with the flow, then that facility has a potential of losing a lot of money, and so does that provider. So if you are correct and you can produce a viable, reliable resource however you got that answer, then you need to speak up and say so. It is not the time to be meek. When I see coders that don't want to speak up and they're just, oh, okay, well, they said, and I'm just going to go with what, you don't want to get in trouble, obviously, like, sort of being argumentative. But at the same time, if you have a solid argument and the, the, the difference between, doing things just because of the status quo and actually doing them the right way, you want to pick doing the right way, and you want to be able to say, hey, this is why I did this, and hopefully someone in your facility will be able to see what you're saying, and if not, they can explain to you why they are correct. Okay. Because sometimes we misinterpret things. Sometimes people can misinterpret how things are read or whatever, so just make sure that you talk it out. Again, like I said, it's not a business for the meek. You have to be able to speak up for yourself. And even if you are an introverted person, you still need to be able to speak up for yourself. You've got to be able to advocate for why you selected the codes that you did. And then another thing is, even for my veteran medical coders, if you are coding your clinic and you're thinking that you're doing everything right and everything's running smoothly, you still need to sort of take a step back and then do a sweep of your past encounters to make sure that you aren't missing anything. Sometimes it is possible to miss things, or to say, oh, well, we need to look at perhaps doing some classes in clinical documentation improvement, because providers are not coders. Okay, they're never meant to be coders. They're meant to be providers. Our job is to do the coding. Our job is to make sure that we're getting all the information that we need for this patient and for everything that happened in the encounter, so that way everybody gets their credit. So this is our job to do. Okay, but we can only do this successfully if we have a good and successful relationship with our providers. If we have this open dialogue, open communication. And it goes back to what happened the other day when my facility starts using this Mako machine. Mako, M-A-K-O, is a wonderful device that does a lot of good work in joint surgeries. So be sure to look it up if you're interested in finding out more information about it. But our facility just started with this machine, and I am not the surgery coder for orthopedics, but I am not the person to stay quiet. I literally cannot stay quiet when it comes to making sure that my providers get all the credit that they deserve. I do not stay quiet. It is impossible for me. So when I'm going through, and out of my own curiosity, I went through the encoder and I was trying to find out what the code would possibly be for this new device. The code wasn't coming up. Like, all the codes that were coming up were just did not make sense. Like, when I'm reading it, I'm like, no, this code doesn't make sense. Because sometimes when you're putting a procedure in the encoder, or you're putting in information to get a procedure code in the encoder, and the encoder is giving you a procedure code, sometimes you can't always rely on the selection that it gives you, because sometimes if you're going through the tree and you happen to select the wrong way, it can give you the wrong code. So this is the reason that having the book near you, and then being able to look in the book and sort of referencing the book that way helps. I happened to find that Mako code by doing an internet search, and that was how I was able to find it as well. So that's why you want to make sure that you are taking the time to verify. Once I looked up that code, and I verified it in the book, and I verified it in my procedure CDR, the coder desk reference. That was all it took, because I was just like, okay, well, this is the code. So I went and I shared it with my providers back there, and Dr. X was the first one that was up using that machine, and we talked about it. And the reason that we were able to talk about it was because I was able to know that this was a code that was going to be needed, and if I know I struggled to find it in the encoder, I was pretty much guaranteeing that, anybody else was going to be able to have a hard time finding it too. So I talked about it with Dr. X. We made sure that he had everything documented like he was supposed to. That's a step towards clinical documentation improvement. But as I said before, he's brilliant. So he already had all of his information in there anyway that he needed. I just looked over it just to make sure everything was there. I shared this information with the surgery coder for my facility, and she was glad because, like I said, this was not an easy code to find, because if you're thinking of it in terms of, being a certain way in the book, it will lead you to the wrong codes. So I showed her the article and I showed her my references and things like that, and she was just very glad. So we're able to make sure that everybody's getting credit for all the work that they're doing. These are complicated things. These are not very easy things. So again, it's just taking that initiative and being able to do that. I have a lot of that when it comes to orthopedics and podiatry in my clinics, because I don't like just sort of sitting on the sidelines and being like, oh, okay, well, I'm just going to code this today and that's all. I really do like to stretch myself as far as like learning more and making sure that I am looking at the documentation and asking those questions. Asking those questions is really huge. Like, what are you doing? Or just having a passing conversation with them and being like, hey, how's it going? Is there anything new going on? And just sort of talking to them that way. They say, oh yeah, I did this and I did this. Okay, well, did you document it? Because as we all know, as medical coders, if it's not documented, it didn't happen. And I tell my providers all the time, I'm not in the room with you. I mean, there's no way for me to know what's going on in there. So you have to be able to tell me on paper. You have to be able to tell me in their documentation what is going on with this patient. Everything that they're doing has to go follow that patient around. This helps the next provider who's taking care of this patient, and if we have like seriously ill patients or patients with chronic problems, it helps to know in their documentation, in their encounters, what has been done to this patient. It's all about communication and advocating for yourself and advocating for your provider and just having that veracity of learning more and craving that knowledge. I've been looking at my recent issues of the New England Journal of Medicine, and these are covering a wide range of topics. I don't just stick to, the bone articles, even though I sort of look at those first. But I do look at my other clinics that I do have. I sort of go in order that way. If I see a pulmonary, I'll read that one next, I like to read the whole thing because you never know what information you're going to need. Okay? So everything, all of that just plays a part in it. I like to study, so this is the fun part for me, But if you like to study, this is a great field for you. Ultimately, it is really going to be up to you. How do you know if you're going to like it? That's another question I would get. How do I know if I'm going to like it? How do you know if you're going to like any field you get into? I know some people that have become doctors that, they're like, I should have been a lawyer, there's those, there's people that are lawyers that wish they could be florists, you know what I mean? So it just depends on where you are in your life. The thing about being a medical coder is that, we can have this wonderful, fascinating, full career with just a credential, with literally just a high school diploma or a GED. We can get a credential and have a wonderful career and never go to college and never do anything else as far as like education wise. Just have a credential and then you can have a full career. that to me is a wonderful thing. I mean, it's really awesome. I mean, I of course am going to continue to do more education because that's just how I am. I am gonna I'm working on a few things, and I'm not talking about them just yet. But I am working on a few things, so I do have some things coming down the pipe. But you know, I always hesitate when I answer that question as far as like, how do I know I'm gonna like it? Well, I like it, but then, I like country music, and everybody's like, country music, but I like country music. I like country music and cowboy boots and fast cars and, clothes and shoes, and not everybody's into that, you know what I mean? So what I like and what I think is good and fun and cool, it may not be the next person's cup of tea. So I really don't know how to answer that one. I know that I share my love for my profession all the time in these videos. Some days you'll see me talk about some of the things that aggravate me and annoy me or whatever. But those are very few and far in between. There's not a whole lot of fuss in videos. Most of my videos are very positive about like what goes on and things like that, or what you need to know, or the things that you should be doing. Those are the things that I do talk about a lot, and I talk about those for good reason, because I felt there was a need to discuss more and have real talk and do those things. Some people don't like my real talk, so that's another thing too. So again, it all depends on you. If to me, this changed my life. And I know that sounds cheesy, and I've said it before, and I've talked about it in a couple of other videos. Yes, it does sound cheesy, but it is true. I really don't know what I would be doing if I wasn't a medical coder. And the thought of like not being around my providers and not being around, all these people in the industry is just like, I don't know. To me, I think it would be like not as fun, but maybe I would be on a different path. But I think that somehow the fate of my life followed this trajectory of getting on this path and being a medical coder. And, my mom, before she passed away, she was able to see that I was able to have a successful career and have a stable job or a career really, and be able to support myself, and that to me was a blessing that she was able to see that, that I was going to be okay. I was going to be able to support myself and not have to worry about those things. I think that's what any parent wants, before they see their kids off. They want to make sure that they're going to be okay. And my mom was there with me. She was there with me through my whole journey in school, and supporting me and being there for me, and I will always be grateful for that. I will always be grateful for her guidance and for her support. And like I said, I don't know where I would be if I didn't get into medical coding. So I mean, and I do love it more every day. So it's sort of hard to ask somebody that is biased, and I say it all the time. I am very biased when it comes to medical coding because I do love it so much. Um, so it really all depends, and where you are in your life as well. If you're trying to get into a field and you want to get into something and make a lot of money right away, this is not going to be it, because it does take time to get a job with medical coding. It's not one of those ones that you can get a job right away, because I don't know why they always tell you have to have 2 years of experience. I never understand that, and I have never gotten a good reason as to why that is. Uh, but it just is. So had I known before that you can like work for a medical billing company, and that's how you can sort of start your way in, as well as working for a temporary agency, that's another way. Um, those are some of the things that you can do to start, getting your foot in the door. But you really do have to stay on it. Um, you cannot get defeated before you get your first job. You just have to keep going, no matter how many doors you get closed in your face. I had to move. I literally had to move when I first started. So I was in my first assignment for 3 months, and then I had to literally move away from my hometown. And everything about that time was just trying to get back home so that I could be with my mom, because my mom was sick. And so that was the thing that was going on then. Um, it I just wanted more for myself. That was another motivator. I wanted more for my life, and I really didn't know what I wanted to do at that time. And then when I got into medical coding, I was like, oh, okay, well, this is a pretty interesting field. And like I said, I love it now. And I will always say that if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. And to me, I feel that way. Even though sometimes, like, I leave work and my eye will twitch because I'll have a provider or two that wants to act up, and I have to be like, I need y'all to get back on track, and I say, do you see my eye twitching? Do you see this? And they just start laughing at me. They're like, come on, Blue, but at the same time, I stay on them, and I don't nag them, but I do make sure I give them lots of attention, because they take care of patients all day, and I make sure that I take care of them, because they're so busy giving all of their energy and all of their knowledge and everything into the patient's care and managing the patient. Somebody needs to watch out for them as well. So I try to do that, through their documentation, making sure I pick up everything, and making sure that I'm there for them whenever they do need to ask a question. I have been a little hands off because I've been concentrating on a few other things. Plus, I went to Chicago a couple weeks ago, so having all that time off sort of did mess things up. But it's all right. I'm just getting back on track now. But I will have time to catch up once the holidays get here, because everybody will go on leave, and I will be able to concentrate a lot more. Because I don't do anything. I don't go anywhere for the holidays, so it's all right. But yes, but yeah, those are my thoughts for today. Like I said, it's just some real talk. Tomorrow is going to be Quiz Friday, and is going to be urology. I'm also going to throw in a procedure in there for the Mako, and see if you guys can come up with a code. And I think that would be really interesting. So, but if you guys have any questions, Q&A Tuesday, I'm still stockpiling those questions. So if you want to do that, just shoot me an email, or leave a comment below, and I will get back to you. All right, so I will go ahead and close this up. But if you are a medical coder, a medical coding student, somebody curious about the fascinating world of medical coding, a provider or a nurse, I invite you to like and subscribe and follow me on my journey in medical coding. All right, I will see y'all tomorrow. Bye.